Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 13, Episode 26. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here, Steelers Nation, on this Monday as the Pittsburgh Steelers had the weekend off, and we kind of had the weekend off as well, Dave, watching some football. What was the best game you watched, if you could pick one this weekend?
Yeah, I think it was probably the Dolphins Bills game for sure. I enjoyed that one. Watched several. Don't get a chance to really sit back on a Sunday and watch multiple games, but I had the Red Zone channel going and another TV going, and got sensory overload there for quite a bit. But and I enjoyed that Wake Forest game the other day on Saturday as well too. So got to watch a lot of football, but I would say hands down the Bills game against the Dolphins was very entertaining, and I can't wait to watch the rematch of those two teams for sure.
Mm-hmm. Who did Wake Forest play? What was the game there?
What was that game? That was the game against I
didn't get to watch a lot of college football. Let's see who they played. They played. Oh, that was the Clemson game. Oh, yeah, I saw a little bit of that in overtime.
Yeah. Because I had Wake Forest plus the points in that one, but I thought for sure that quarterback Hartman of theirs. Man, he's tiny. He's small. I think he's one of those 6 foot or 6'1" kids. But you want to talk about a kid that can throw the football and not afraid to step up in the pocket. It's that kid right there. And Wake Forest has got some wide receivers too that really can stretch the football field. So that's really the kind of first I've heard a little bit about that quarterback over there. And I had just good feeling that they should have beat Clemson. Quite honest with you, that thing went into overtime and all like that. But I really enjoyed that game and getting my first real eyes on the Hartman kid. But NFL games ruled, and man, that game Sunday night between the 49ers and Broncos was like a train wreck that you couldn't look.
It felt like Big Ten. It felt like Iowa Northwestern or something. 7-5 at one point.
Yeah, you couldn't take your eyes off that thing. I imagine the ratings will end up being pretty good on that because of the fact that it was one of those games. It was so bad you had to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the Broncos came out of that with what should have been a scoregami, if we're talking realistic. But the last time that had happened was many moons ago, 2008, when the Steelers beat the Chargers and took away a last second touchdown by Troy Polamalu.
Yep, still one of the worst calls I've seen on that last lateral play that Troy breaks up. And I'm still not even 100% sure why they didn't rule that a touchdown. I think what happened was as soon as they called an illegal forward pass, they ruled the play dead, which it should not have been ruled. The play should have been allowed to continue. So I went back and watched the end of that game last night, and the game was over, and they spent 10 minutes trying to figure this thing out. They initially called it a touchdown, then they didn't, and they called it a touchdown, then they waved it back off. So just a really weird way. Should have been first scoregami last night. As you said, I imagine the ratings will be good because the NFL is like pizza. Even when it's bad, it's still pretty good, and people are going to watch anyway. So I assume the ratings will be good for a primetime game. And with Hartman, I don't know much about him, but he's playing with house money. He had the medical issue, and it felt like he was not going to get to play football again. And then he got cleared a couple weeks ago, I think it was, and he's back in the lineup. So good for him. And you're right. I think Bills Dolphins, the best game that I watched this week. And one game you will not be able to watch again is the NFL Pro Bowl. The NFL saying they are officially eliminating the Pro Bowl and replacing it with the Pro Bowl games. So they're replacing the Pro Bowl with the Pro Bowl games, which is not great branding, I don't think, overall, but apparently it'll be some flag football and different competition and skills type games and things like that. And so that's the biggest news coming out of Monday is the elimination of the Pro Bowl. And I say that's fine because the Pro Bowl was bad. I didn't even watch it, and I watch as much football as I can consume. So I'm good with them trying something different.
Yeah, look, I'm okay with this decision. I mean, the Pro Bowl game has not been football for several years now, and I think it's starting to wear on. It's worn on people enough, and I would imagine the ratings probably haven't been what they like them to be. This almost sounds like, and this is before your time, the old Superstars competition way back.
I love those. I mean, wasn't John Kolb in those?
Yeah,
he was in the
Franco,
Iron Man or Strongman, but yeah.
Yeah, Franco was in those. Lynn Swan.
Right.
You just had all the. That's really what this. They would have them where they would do the bike. Bike races and. I mean, just like it was almost like a mini Olympics, if you would, something along those lines. Tug of war at the end, and that was always exhilarating there, especially with those strong offensive linemen. But yeah, I'm fine with this changes here because look, and even the flag football, we'll see how long that lasts. All it's going to take is one guy cutting the wrong way one time, and hopefully not tear up a knee. But the regular football game has not become football game in pads in several years. So I'm interested to see how this lays out. And I think it's going to happen in Vegas too, right?
I believe so. I didn't read the whole press release there, but that makes sense. I just remember watching, Larry Allen on the bench press growing up and just stuff like that was really cool and really unique. So hopefully I don't know exactly what the games are going to be, what that looks like. I don't know if that's been announced. I just kind of saw some of the headlines and what Josh Carney wrote for the site, but hopefully they do some fun, unique stuff like that.
Yeah, and they should take a page out of the old Superstars, I think, competition. But we'll see what that looks like the closer we get to it. But as I said, the football hasn't been football in several years, and I think. And look, anytime you get these guys out of helmet, probably better for their own marketing brand,
sure,
their own self-branding anyway, right? So I bet a lot of the players are for it as well too.
Yeah, it's not like baseball and basketball where you see everyone's faces and people recognize the stars. Everyone knows what Patrick Mahomes looks like, but they might not know what a receiver or an offensive lineman surely looks like. So that'll be good for branding and for I think just the enjoyment of that week, because the game was just it was flag football, but in the most boring, dull form of here's a 2-hand touch and they go slowly to the ground and nobody really cares. So we'll see. I don't imagine it's going to make the week that exciting, but anything different is good in my book.
Look, you still have those they're going to be competitive, right? There's guys still want to win. They just didn't want to have to win by knocking the living out of somebody.
Exactly. No one wants to get hurt.
Right. Nobody wants to get hurt. Exactly.
All right, Dave, let's transition to getting an eye towards week 4 against the New York Jets for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and what's a pretty critical game overall, and focusing on the Jets here, in terms of their injury status as they lose to the Bengals yesterday, 27-12. For the Jets, Robert Saleh says that quarterback Zach Wilson expected to come back for week 4. Still caution doctors have to officially medically clear him, but that's always been the expectation for Wilson week 4, dating back to the summer. And they dealt with some injuries in terms of their offensive tackle, George Fant, and defensive lineman Quincy Williams. And I know you wrote about that late last night. So what's the outlook on those guys?
Yeah, it's not the defensive lineman. It's the linebacker, Quincy Williams.
Oh, I'm sorry. They got so many guys with similar names. I apologize.
Yeah, Quincy Williams was the one that was carted off with the ankle injury. At first looked like it was a lot worse than that, but they're calling it an ankle injury. He had some sort of kind of leg cast on, or air cast or something on that left leg. It's serious enough. I don't think he's going to play, although Robert Saleh didn't say too much about it. Now the George Fant, obviously at left tackle, he had already been coming off of knee surgery from the offseason and all like that. So he evidently re-aggravated something along with that knee injury there. And once again, Robert Saleh didn't spread a lot of info. He said, we'll see, get those guys checked and reevaluated and all like that. But it wasn't like George Fant has been playing well, I don't think, this year. And his replacement against the Bengals midway through that game, Connor McDermott, didn't play all that terribly well either. So them losing, their inside linebacker and Quincy Williams and their starting left tackle and George Fant are two pretty good blows that'll be worth monitoring throughout this next week here. And it looked like Garrett Wilson might, their rookie wide receiver Garrett Wilson might have been knocked out of that game at first, because he took a solid rib shot there in the first half from I think Jesse Bates it was, and he left and went to the locker room. I thought, oh Lord, that's probably going to be cracked ribs or something like that. But he ended up coming back in the second half, so they dodged the bullet there. And as you mentioned, all eyes will be on Zach Wilson at quarterback this week. And here's kind of, before we get into this thing, obviously we're not breaking down the game fully today, but interesting to watch what happens at, I almost called it Heinz Field, Acrisure Stadium this coming weekend, because it was announced late on Saturday that the University of Pittsburgh will be hosting Georgia Tech in an 8 p.m. affair at Acrisure Stadium. And I think there's something like, isn't there like always a 56% chance of rain in Pittsburgh?
Pretty much. It rained yesterday.
But there's a 56, or at least yesterday, there was a 56% chance of rain for Saturday night for that Pitt Georgia Tech game. And then 56% chance or 55% chance of rain for the Sunday 1 p.m. Eastern time kickoff between the Jets and the Steelers. That might be one torn up field. And I haven't heard anything of whether or not they're going to try to replace the sod and all after the Pitt Georgia Tech game. That'd make for a long night for somebody, I'll tell you that. And even if it rains, so makes you, even though it sounds like Zach Wilson's on schedule to play, I mean, you could be running him out there on a field that's kind of unstable, if you know what I'm saying.
Sure, it's a really good point. And in Pittsburgh, there's a 56% chance of every weather on every given day, of snow, of rain, of wind, of heat. So that's just the way Pittsburgh weather is. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know much about, groundskeeping, but it was like trying to replace sod after a late game. I'll try. That's how I should have spent my weekend. But I imagine trying to replace sod after a late game in rainy conditions is not an ideal or best thing to do. So the field could be a little torn up for Sunday's game, no doubt about that.
Have you ever sodded a yard before?
I have not.
Oh, yeah.
I sounds like you have.
Yeah, okay. More than once. I bet you got city boy hands, don't you?
I do. Don't ask me to do much. If I was born in any other era, I would not be a useful person. I was born in the very perfect point in time, because I am not. I am good in this environment. Anything else, I'm kind of useless.
Your hands probably look like a woman's, don't they?
Hey, I mow my own lawn.
Huh? Oh, you do?
I mow my own lawn. Yeah, I got this big corner lot, which I regret very much, because it takes forever to mow the lawn.
Oh Lord, you never sodded before, or had to pour concrete or anything like that, huh?
Nope.
All right.
That's why I'm here. So please keep me here.
I got you. It's going to be interesting. Where did that line come from? Oh, Jaws, I think, when he looks at his hands, he's just city boy hands. But anyway, it will be interesting to see what happens Saturday night in that game, and particularly if it rains, because we know that field at or when it was Heinz Field, that thing could get chewed up pretty good,
Definitely. So, and I think with them losing Fant, if he does not play in the Week 4 game, is an especially big loss, because they were already down Becton, who was lost before the year began, and they lost Fant, and they're going to be really struggling at tackle. So for a Pittsburgh pass rush that needs some good matchups, they could get some this weekend.
Right, absolutely, they could. And I think really the Steelers, and we'll find out more, is obviously when Mike Tomlin talks to the media on Tuesday. I think Akilla Witherspoon was really kind of the only guy that we're kind of waiting to see what the progress is on that, with him leaving that game the other night with a hamstring injury.
Right. We'll get the update tomorrow and talk about that for Wednesday's show. Before we get into the All-22 recap and review the Browns game, a quick AFC North recap. And as you put it, the AFC North went 3-1, with the Steelers being the only team in the losing column. So after they all lost in week 2, they all, except Pittsburgh, win in week 3. That's Baltimore over the Patriots. That's the Bengals over the Jets. And then, of course, the Browns beating the Steelers. So a bad start to the week became even worse based on how the AFC North went this weekend.
Yeah, gloom, despair, and agony on me. That's not the way that you hoped the rest of the AFC North would have went. For a little while there, it looked like the Ravens were going to have their hands full with the Patriots, but the Patriots just kept turning the football over in kind of unpatriot manner, and Lamar Jackson in that game. Man, that guy four touchdowns passing and one more throwing. I think he was responsible for 300 and between throwing and rushing. I think he was responsible for 325 of their 394 total yards of offense. That's, man, 107 yards on the ground. And of course, he was their leading rusher on just 11 carries in that game. And they didn't give that kid a contract this past offseason. And going to be interesting to see how they play the game of tag with him moving forward. Mark Andrews had a Mark Andrews game in that game. My boy Devin Duvernay showing some flashes in that game as a wide receiver and as a return man there. But they took care of the Patriots in that one. And as you kind of already mentioned, the Bengals really easily handled the New York Jets on the road there.
You know, one really weird scheduling quirk the Jets have this year, their first 4 games in the year,
AFC North,
including week 4, are all AFC North teams. It's I don't know if I've ever seen that kind of scheduling format and layout before, but that's all besides the point. So right now, Pittsburgh sitting technically, I think, as you said, 3rd in the North, behind the Browns and the Ravens, and ahead of the Bengals. Yeah,
and only because they've beaten the Bengals head to head. And look, week 4 of the NFL. No such thing as a must-win game, if you will. But boy, when you look at the games coming up on the schedule for the Steelers, especially now between now and their bye week, it really, there's hard to pick out games that you think that they might have a chance to win, to be quite honest with you. So you better take the ones that people are going to have you circled to win. And I think the Steelers, at least as of this morning, 3.5 point home favorites against the Jets. The Steelers, I don't think, are going to be favored in many of these games, these next several games going forward there. This is probably one they probably want to make sure to win.
That is a subject of my terrible take today, the importance, although typically we use the phrase must-win game probably a bit too much, just the general football public. And this team technically climbed out of a 1-3 hole last year. To do so this year, if you lose to the Jets Sunday, would be extremely tough, because on the other side of the Jets game before the bye is at Buffalo versus Tampa Bay, at Miami, at Philadelphia, or maybe that's switched, but Dolphins and Philadelphia, the Eagles on the road, and Pittsburgh will not be favored in any of those games, and rightfully so. So you better, my thought was this, Dave, and this is going to be pretty pessimistic, but this is kind of realistic to me. You beat the Jets, and then you go 1-3 over the next 4. You're 3-5 heading into the bye. A bad place to be, no doubt, but then it gets maybe a little bit easier on the other side of the bye, and you try to put a run together to stack a couple wins and get back into the hunt. At least that's kind of where my head's at right now.
If I could guarantee you they're 3-5 at that point, would you take it right now, or would you trade it all in for what's behind door number 2?
Oh, I'm not a good gambler. I think I would. I know that's super pessimistic sounding, but
you're no fan, Alex. You guys aren't fans of the team.
Yeah, we get that a lot. Would you take that?
I'd take it in a heartbeat, I think, right now. If you give me the Jets game, and then let's see, which one would I pick? It would have to be an AFC game, obviously, right?
Dolphins or Bills. I guess the Dolphins, because they're I don't know who's more likely a wild card team at this point, Bills or Dolphins. Maybe still Miami, but they look impressive.
And with as you mentioned, I think I'd go after the one which boy, the Dolphins look like they might be for real, man. But in its current form, I think I would take back-to-back wins against Jets and the Bills, and then drop the 3 straight and then go into bye and take my chances after that way if you could give me the guarantee.
Okay, I would take the Bills because, unfortunately, I'm going to miss the Dolphins game, the first Steelers game I'm going to miss in over a decade, and so I will selfishly take watching a Bills win.
Okay, all right.
But regardless, 3 of 5.
Yeah, I think if you can get to that point, at least the back end of the schedule doesn't look as tough as the front end for sure.
Right. So that was my thought. But it all starts with beating the Jets, because under the same scenario, if you lose to the Jets and then win one of the next 4 games against that tough gauntlet of opponents, you're 2-6 at the bye. And historically, only one team has ever made the playoffs when they were 2-6, the 2020 Washington football team or whatever they were calling themselves at that point. So historically, your odds are essentially 0.
Yeah, who's the weak between getting past the Jets game? Who's the weakest team of the Bills, Buccaneers, Dolphins, and Eagles? It might be Tom Brady.
It's easily the Buccaneers because their offense looks erect. Their defense still looks elite, but they are easily the weakest. But when the weakest link is Tom Brady, that says it all. Yeah,
that's what I'm getting at. When that tells you what the schedule looks like when you're talking about, boy, I can't wait to at least get to the Tom Brady game here.
Right. So that's where things sit right now. All right, Dave, I know we've both gone through the All-22 over the extended break. So to me, I don't think that my impressions changed too terribly much watching the game over again through the All-22 lens as opposed to watching it live. But what were your thoughts whenever you really dove into the tape?
Boy, I want an offensive line like the Browns.
Where do you get one of those?
Yeah, sign me up. They sell those at Walmart or anything? Or
Target, I think, a little higher end.
Okay, higher end shopping there. Well, there you go. The Steelers need to do more higher end shopping in the draft. And have I mentioned running backs? I think running backs are fungible. Have I ever mentioned that before? And that's that's not a shot at Najee Harris. It's just you say you say that you want the running game fixed, but you don't go out there and spend the high quality draft picks or the high money on offensive linemen. I think it's foolish to expect a running back to come in, even a first round running back, and solve those woes for you. And man, you look at the Browns and specifically on the All-22 once again, and they're a type of team that says, look, we're going to run it. We're going to run it. You're not going to be able to stop us running it. And that's really what it felt like when you go into the end zone view of that kind of stuff. The pin and pull stuff, the inside zone, the outside zone. They ran, I think, the same outside zone play 3 or 4 times in that game, and I don't think changed the personnel or the formation in it, and it cracked it. The Steelers did help out a little bit in the running game, and the fact that I don't think Miles Jack has played very, very well for the Steelers. He leads the team in tackles, obviously, but there are instances, especially in this game against the Browns, of him being in the wrong gap. I think there are missed tackles galore in this game. Going to keep probably Josh Carney pretty busy on that this week. And that's just the running game. And as you pointed out in the film room there, Browns know to go empty, don't they?
It's tried and true and incredibly effective. 9 of 13 for 101. Pittsburgh, to their credit, tried to do more, and they didn't always get the dreaded linebacker on receiver matchups, but man or zone, blitzing, nothing really worked against empty. And that's one big reason why Njoku had a really productive game overall. But to the run game, you're right. The Browns stayed on, they just stayed on schedule the entire game, whether that was with the run game or with their empty sets. They used that to be efficient on first down, stay on schedule, get in the third and manageable, and have 3 or 4 quarterback sneaks with Jacoby Brissett. No one got off blocks, missed tackles galore. Nick Chubb was pushing people and getting yards after contact and dragging Robert Spillane on several plays. So yeah, I mean, it just nothing overly complicated in terms of run game issues. It was just guys not being super assignment sound and not getting up blocks and far too many missed tackles.
Look, when you have a line like that, you can execute, which they obviously did. You've got two backs that can carry people in 1A and 1B, and Chubb and Kareem Hunt. It makes the life for a quarterback a lot, especially when you don't have TJ Watt on the other side. Look, Alex Highsmith's having a hell of a season, but he can't do it all. And they made sure to make sure that Cam Hayward wasn't going anywhere in this game. He got a lot of shifts and attention to his side, and they really didn't get much of anything on the other edge over there. And it basically came down to how much can Alex Highsmith impact a game up front,
right?
That was it,
right. And one man, can't do that all on his own. And what Pittsburgh tried to do, they stayed in base against a lot of 3 receiver sets just to try to stop the run, and that still didn't always work. And the Browns would go empty, knowing that Pittsburgh would stay in their base against 11 and really get some good matchups in their favor. And so Pittsburgh just really trying to play catch up the whole way through. I know that there is the fungibility of it all, but Nick Chubb, a high 2nd round pick behind a really good offensive line.
That's not first round though. Last I looked,
I know
second round. Last I looked, second round is not first round.
But it's still a high investment in a running back. It's not undrafted, I wouldn't call 2nd round a fungible type of selection of throwaway. We'll just draft a 2nd round guy and plug him in. I mean, I feel like that's a high investment in the guy. Look at some of the top backs in football, Taylor, Henry.
But if you don't have that line, is Nick Chubb still Nick Chubb?
No, you need to have an
I mean, he's a good back. Najee's a great back, but yet that you got Kareem Hunt's a good back. There's a lot of very good running backs. Excuse me. In the NFL, I mean, Derrick Henry. There were. I don't know how much you saw that Raiders Titans game, but there were moments where that guy's a thoroughbred out in space if you give him room to run. And if you're in the secondary and that guy's coming your way, there's no way you want a piece of that. But if you don't have the offensive line to go along with it on a consistent basis, and here's the thing too, bless Najee's heart, he is not as good an offensive line that you're going to get. There's not going to be many of these breakaway runs by him, and sure. You even see this that kid James Robinson down in Jacksonville pop one for 50-something yards, yesterday there. Those kind of things change games, man, when you get them from a running back specifically. And I have a feeling in a few more years, people are going to go back and say, you know what, Dave, you're right. They should have never drafted a running back in the first round. They should have been concentrating on offensive line all this time here, and me, sign 10 undrafted free agent running backs every year, go scout the rest during the preseason and find you a Jaylen Warren.
Yeah, no point taken. The Browns are interesting because, they've done both. They've invested highly in offensive linemen. They've invested highly in running backs. They've had big free agent acquisitions, but their best offensive lineman was a 5th round pick in Wyatt Teller. And so it's kind of been a bit reverse. But to your point, and I agree wholeheartedly, you have to have the good offensive line. A good running back alone is not going to be able to get the job done. And certainly there's been a lack of investment there overall in terms of the high draft pick stuff that we expect this team to probably get back to. Although I'm not really quite sure where that would be based on the current state of the offensive line. There isn't one guy that seems to be so they have to replace him with a high pick based on where this offensive line has progressed so far the first 3 weeks of the year.
Yeah, but they can run everything, and the Steelers they haven't run a lot of outside zone this year, but they've run a little bit of it. But what are they good at?
Yeah, I think an overall offensive identity is certainly lacking. The run blocking, at least in the first half, was really strong. I'll have a video on that tomorrow. They were getting a good push.
Sure.
And it just really was just lack of possessing the football in the second half, and that I thought the Browns got more aggressive in terms of stopping the run. Tight ends had some issues in terms of their run blocking, which probably hurt things in the second half. But this unit, based on where they've been the last 2 weeks, they can get a bit of a push.
Look, where this all, and we're both going to agree, our fears of what this offensive line might be before week 1 versus where they are right now. is, I mean, it's just not low. I mean, they have surpassed what I thought they would be at this point of the season. That said, when you look at what they did in all 22 against the Browns versus what the Browns did, it looks night and day.
Sure. Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
You could drive some trucks through some of those holes that the Browns had. I mean, just it's really high value, execution, high level execution on the Browns, and how much that goes back to the offensive line coach and the teaching and all like that. Look, Dan Morris and Chukwuma Okorafor, I think, are both playing very, very good at the start of the season, especially the last couple of weeks here. But a good run for the Steelers is it feels like 4.5 yards, and maybe we're all standing with an applause if Jaylen Warren gets 8.
No, I understand.
That's not what the ceiling should be. It should be some of these, man, popped another one for 18, and that's how the Browns are able to move, move the football against the Steelers and stay ahead of the sticks and, defensively getting back to kind of the game in the all 22. We talk a lot over the years about rush and coverage going hand in hand, right? Well,
right.
What happens if you don't have the rush?
No, I understand. I agree. I just lost my point here, but
I was talking about run game and all like that. Maybe I can help you catch it here.
Yeah. But no, this offensive line, I mean, it just hasn't come all together. What I was going to say was, I mean, the Browns have all the pieces and they have their identity. They know who they are. They know their scheme that's been tried and true, and they're very effective with it, with some really good coaching overall. And Pittsburgh's still trying to figure out who they are and how they win. They know they want to run the ball, but they don't really know what schemes they want to rely on the best. And they don't quite have all the pieces that have quite come together at the level that Cleveland is doing it. So it's a sad state of affairs when we're sitting here saying, let's be the Browns, but that's where things are at right now.
Good point. Yeah, we strive to be the Browns.
Right. So anything else on the 22?
And that's what the Steelers were, at one time with the running game. Plus, they had this guy named Ben Roethlisberger that could extend some plays from time to time on top of it there. So when you look at Jacoby Brissett's passing chart overall, and this is one of the things that we highlighted before the game, right? Where are their deep shots? Why isn't Jacoby Brissett having to take deep shots through the first 2 games of the season? Well, when you have that running game and you can stay ahead of the chains and you can roll out empty against the Steelers base, because you know what you're going to get there, you don't have to throw the football down the field much of any. I think Brissett attempted 2 passes over 20 yards in that game, and both of them I believe should have been completed. I think the one was called, wasn't the one over there
out of bounds?
Yeah. I think that was one of the ones that was incomplete there, at least when looking at the dots here. But and in total, it looks like Brissett had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 passes more than 10 yards down the field.
I believe it.
If you're a Steelers fan and I hand you this chart, you're saying if I didn't put a name on this passing chart and said, man, look at Mitch Trubisky's passing chart from the other day, people are tearing stuff up, know. But when you change the wrapper on it and change the name on it, you put Jacoby Brissett on it, and it goes, nobody bats an eye at it, do they?
Well, if you gave me the run game stats too with that chart, that's where it all comes together. And that's your point. I understand. Right. And the other completion or the other attempt at 20 plus yards was what, the 3rd and 1 play action to Cooper, I'm assuming as well. And so,
and you got to take shots,
Right. But I'm saying, to the point of they use their run game to create their play action game. Not that you always have to have a good run game to open up play action. That's a bit of a fallacy, but it certainly doesn't hurt overall when you're 3rd and 1. And Pittsburgh certainly sold hard. Minka bit really hard on the stretch zone, fake on that one. And Cooper got leverage on Sutton, and that was kind of all she wrote there. So again, the Browns know who they are. They know their identity. They stay on schedule, and the Steelers are trying to search and accomplish all of those things.
And then, other stuff, you can't go, you go back and you watch offensively what the Steelers tried to do, and they took more than their fair shot of shots down the field in this one, but they weren't high percentage kind of stuff, I don't think, overall. And then you just go back to circling 1 and 9 on third down, and what was it, 5 opportunities of 5 yards or fewer in that game on third down. They couldn't convert. And what'd you think about who was that NFL Network guy, I think, that pointed out of rolling out Mitch Trubisky right into Myles Garrett's side on one of those third downs, and him having a big issue.
That wasn't Emmanuel Acho?
Yeah, Acho.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He's ESPN, I think.
What is that? Where he's at?
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, I didn't watch the clip, but is that what it said?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's your thoughts all offensively? And look, and Mitch isn't going to be Hartman and stand up, jump up into the pocket like that too. I mean, at first glimpse of color, he's probably running out of that pocket there. But if he's going to do that, he needs to be able to make more plays on the move.
Sure. I need to go back and watch each third down specifically. I watched it, of course, as I just went through the game, but I need to isolate how they went 1 and 9 on third down, being in several, and that's been the story of the season to start, a lot of manageable situations. It's not all been 3rd and 11 plus, and you're just playing it safe or sitting there going, well, your odds of making it are really low, and that's how you're 1 and 9. So did you feel a common theme or thread between their third down failures, Dave?
No, I need to go back and rewatch each one specifically as well too. Maybe that'll make for a good film room for early in the week here before we get into the Jet stuff.
But it is a big problem because on the year they're 33. I think they're a 1/3% conversion rate on third down, and again, really the majority of that success came in the first half against the Patriots. If you just hypothetically for a moment removed that half, they're probably 20% on third down.
And look, I mean, we saw a game on Sunday night, where the Broncos, I think at one time had 6 of 8 possessions go 3 and out. And I think they were 0 for 9 on third downs at one point in that game. And no, that was the 49ers. That's how bad both offenses were in this game. You're confused of who was more futile.
The Broncos had the 3 and outs and the 49ers had the third down failures, I believe.
Right. And obviously by going 3 and out, the Broncos weren't converting either, but they did have a drive in there. I think that they converted a couple of them in there, but if you're gonna subscribe to playing that kind of ball, and look, I mean, Mitch, he's got to do a better job, I think, of seeing the field at times too.
Yeah, he's felt a little skittish in the pocket. There's been some drifting and bailing a little bit in situations that feels like he is probably doing himself in this offensive line more harm than good. I mean, it's just, not getting the big play consistently enough, not possessing the ball in the second half, not converting on third down, and just some miscues. And just, again, it was really missed opportunities. Third quarter, the ineligible man downfield that brings that play back, the 3rd and 3 deep shot to Deontay. That's certainly a play that Deontay could make and just couldn't come down with that. Those are the splash plays that are the differences in the game. And that was one reason why, the Steelers, couldn't finish this one out.
Look, people will take this as me defending Mitch Trubisky. That's not it at all. He's got his warts that, he is, as we said the other day, Mitch is who he is. And that was to kind of be expected. I think I don't see how anybody thought he was going to be more than what he's been to this point. But within that, there is a lot of little things going on in this offense that is causing the big picture here. And you can't just changing the quarterback at this point. Maybe it'll help first couple of games, but once they get a read on what Kenny, likes and doesn't like to do, and if they're not able, and we said right out here, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is this season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If they can't run the football effectively, it's going to make for some very interesting games.
Right, but I mean, it felt like they were getting traction, and then I just don't know exactly how it went away. I mean, obviously they didn't have the ball a lot in the second half, but it felt like there has been some progress in the run game, although the overall offensive production has still been so stale.
Right, and then you boil it down, you're not converting third downs. 1 of 9. That's killing a lot of driving, and
True.
inopportune penalties that there's no perfect time for a penalty, right? But for some reason they get that first start on, that false start on. What was the one that Dotson had in that game?
Well, I think it was a third down, wasn't it?
Yeah, manageable situation into an unmanageable situation.
Right.
Then you got to have some guys like the Deontay Johnson play, and there are couple instances in this where you need your playmakers to make plays. And I know people are hollering, and I was in the middle, late in the game. Why hasn't Freiermuth touched the football yet? But they used him quite extensively to help chip and release and those kind of things there. And then they got in a situation in the fourth quarter where they had to start using them in a passing game. Right.
Yeah, I think the other element too, we touched on this, and I think I wrote about it as well, as some of the end of half missed opportunities against the Patriots and the Browns. You had, tough situation, but late in the first half, 30 seconds left, decent field position. You're trying to maybe get 3 points and just running out of time and taking some bad sacks and things like that. I think Pittsburgh's been, unfortunately, pretty wasteful of their first half timeouts each of the last 2 weeks. Against the Patriots, they burned one on a failed hard count attempt on 3rd and 1 when they just need to snap the football and convert there. Against the Browns, they had a 12 men on the field. They had to burn a timeout there defensively. Then they had to burn a timeout on a 3rd down call they didn't like the look of later in that half. And they only have one timeout at the end of the first half, and it really cost them. So getting 3 points are precious. His team needs all the points they can get. And so you're kind of robbing yourself of chances to maybe get 3 points, or at least attempt to at least get a kick out there at the end of a half to try to steal 3 points. And, that's hurting this team as well.
Look, the scoreboard says that's a 12-point game, but we all know the ending of that was just trying to make a play, and the scoreboard is what the scoreboard says and all like that. But, you boil this thing down. I mean, it's a 23-17 game, right? It's a one possession game once again. And then you throw in the fact that, and this is not finger pointing at Boswell, because that win was pretty, pretty brutal there. But, if you make that earlier in the game, it kind of changes the complexion of that game a little bit overall. Whereas as bad as you may have played defensively and offensively, you're still in that thing the last time you touched the football.
Yeah, and defensively, not getting enough takeaways, not enough splash there. The pass rush has been super quiet. Now, when the Browns run the ball the way they did, it's harder to get a good pass rush. But still, there were 3rd down opportunities and drop back opportunities to get after the quarterback, and just could not happen. And they go empty so much, they get the ball out quick. If this defense can't create splash, if Pittsburgh can't not just tie the turnover battle, but win the turnover battle, if they can't do that, they have a really low chance of winning a football game, and they're 1-2 in games in which they do not outright win the turnover battle this year.
Right. Yeah, you got it, and we said there's got to be some short fields involved here for this offense if they're going to win, especially coming up with past the Jets game here and in those 4 games before the bye. There's going to have to, and hopefully they'll get TJ Watt back sooner rather than later, and we'll see about some of the other things here. But if they're not taking away the football and getting sacks and rushing coverage going hand in hand, they're not going to be in games.
On that last play, the lateral, what was Dan Moore doing? Why is he tackling Najee Harris? Not that it matters,
yeah.
But I just don't know what was happening there.
Yeah, those are one of the ones you said, I can't believe I tweeted out the final score already,
Yeah, I thought it was like I posted my winners, losers, and the score changes there. So And again, that goes to officially end the Najee fumble streak, although it comes in an undeserved fashion. Nothing that he did wrong there. Akella Witherspoon not playing well. Yeah, that was the concern. We talked about that Friday. Consistency's always been the issue with him. He certainly played well. This team's best cover corner at the end of last year. Could he, recapture that magic? And it's early, but so far he is not.
One of the things I worried about late last season was how, there were a couple things with him. His tackling, and I think I've been okay with the overall effort with him. Now, he did miss a tackle early in that game, right? On one of those Chubb. I don't know if that was an outside zone. Can't remember if that was outside.
I think it was pulling guards.
It was a pin and pull.
Something like that. Yeah.
And he missed that one there. But there have been instances where he's struggled when in some one-on-one situations, even going back to his days with the 49ers and all like that. And it has been a rough go of it for him, right now. And now he's dealing with a hamstring injury on top of it. Boy, he got turned around by Cooper a couple times in that game, for sure.
Yeah, and so it's been tough for him with leverage and just seeing things, and Cooper's a good route runner, and some of that's not on him, but did not do well in man coverage against Cooper. Pittsburgh's corners have been in the slot a little bit more this year. For example, when they're, going against empty, as they did on the Cooper 28-yard catch and run, Weatherspoon's aligned more inside. He looks uncomfortable there. Levi Wallace was playing slot against the Patriots in week 2, looked uncomfortable there, defending some crossers, and so, there's probably some things to work out there. So maybe things will get better, but it's not been good enough.
Right. Not been good enough at all. Yep.
Any other final thoughts with the all-22? Anything else, big or small, that caught your eye?
Yeah, I'm just going to probably the next 24 hours focus in on, I kind of got away from I just wanted to watch other football on Sunday. So I didn't.
Team score. Yeah, that's always fun.
What's that?
Teams you wanted to watch offenses actually score.
Oh, yeah. For sure. We'll want to see some other stuff there. And I didn't even crack open the all-22 yesterday.
Okay. Yeah. So I went through the defense there last night. But really, I think it was, it's not anything so mystical or elusive. It's, not getting up blocks in the run game, too many missed tackles, not enough splash plays, offensively, defensively, bad on third down. That's essentially the book on this game, this Browns game.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Dave, anything else to talk about? Anything else that caught your eye? I think we're kind of hit on all the topics we wanted to discuss.
Let's see if we got all the headlines out of the way. I think we have, right?
At least the Steelers didn't trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. He's not looking too good in San Francisco right now. So there's that.
Yeah, well, they didn't give him a playbook until late in this thing on top of it.
That's true.
But with that, I think Jimmy Garoppolo is Jimmy Garoppolo, just like Mitch Trubisky is Mitch Trubisky. And as we've stated several times, don't expect the Steelers to go away from Mitch Trubisky for a little while here.
Yeah, I'm with you, Dave. If they lose to the Jets, does that conversation change? Do you think? I know that's a little hard to take a guess at because it depends on how Trubisky plays, but when does that become an actual conversation for you?
I mean, look, it's going to be in the conversation, like it or not, for a while now. But as long as it's not a 3 or 4 interception game, I don't think there's a legitimate chance that Trubisky gets pulled just yet.
Yeah, I'm with you. I still think Tomlin's going to have this don't panic, steady the ship mentality, right or wrong. I think that will be the mentality for the foreseeable future.
Who's in the booth, Alex?
Let's see. Everybody's favorite Matt Canada is in the booth, as he was last year, so no shock there. Matt Tomshaw, which is his right-hand man. Tomshaw's followed Canada around basically his whole college career. There was Denzel Martin, Brian Flores, Dave Pettit, one of the new assistant scouting director members of this organization. So nothing too crazy overall. Just wanted to show that because it's kind of interesting to see who's all where. And so Flores upstairs, Austin downstairs, Olszewski downstairs working with the inside linebacker since Flores is upstairs. So it's just something I wanted to note there on a Monday.
We forgot to cover the Hall of Fame candidates, didn't we?
I think you're right.
Covered that?
The 6 of them that were on that long initial list there. Let me pull up the whole list so I don't miss anyone, but 6 Steelers, including James Harrison, James Ferrier. Let's see, Casey Hampton, I know, was one of them. Let me pull up the whole list. Gary Anderson was a 4th. Hines Ward, of course, and Chad Brown rounds out the 6.
How many of those guys have a legitimate chance this time around?
I mean, are you defining legitimate as chance to become a finalist, I guess?
Yeah.
Ward's always been in that semifinalist Did he get the finalist one year? Wasn't there 1 year he became a finalist, I want to say? Or am I wrong on that?
It feels like that was the case.
Harrison's interesting because the overall career production might not indicate, Hall of Fame Canton status, but he was, to my definition, one of the most dominant players at his position for an extended period of time of about, 5-6 years. That'll be a really interesting one because I think he deserves it, but he's got 80 and a half or 83 and a half career sacks. And on paper, that's not typically enough to get you in this modern era.
Right. Especially when you look at how long it took Kevin Green, right?
Right. But Harrison, dominant player, defensive player of the year, one of the greatest plays in Super Bowl history. There are certainly going to be things on his resume that will really stand out in big, huge ways.
Of the two, obviously, look, poor guy, until they start recognizing two-gapping, the effectiveness of two-gapping nose tackle play, which is never going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Casey can forget about it. We know how tough it is for kickers to get in. So, don't like his chances. Chad Brown's, I don't think going to have a chance ever at this. I think it boils down to, and James Ferrier, as good as James Ferrier was, I don't think he's ever going to be into talk of, man, why isn't James Ferrier in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? No sense of us touching the Hines Ward topic, because that'll just upset people. But I think he's a name that's constantly going to be floating around on these beginning of the year list for obvious reasons. It's just when until maybe at some point this log jam of receivers gets whittled down, and I think that's kind of his best chance. I think point.
Veterans Committee 20 years from now. And the old timers say, back in my day, Hines Ward, he could block. These receivers don't know what they're doing. That's the only path Ward gets in.
Well, by the time if he does get in, then I won't be around for people to say I told you so.
Yeah. All right.
I don't think there's anybody, at least this year, that's going to get in from with Steeler roots.
I don't think Harrison gets in this year, but at any point, could that happen? I could see.
I'd have to go back and re-examine a little bit. I'm with. Look, here's the thing. At one point, you're talking about a guy that has won Defensive Player of the Year, right? You're talking about a guy that at one point was easily considered one of the top 2 or 3, and maybe even at a time or two, the top pass rusher in the NFL.
Yeah. Like I said, that level of dominance that he had basically from 2007 to 2011 was as good as it's going to get for any one player. And that's going to be the strongest case he has to make. Pro Football Reference has a Hall of Fame index that tries to quantify, Hall of Fame status. And just looking at the numbers here briefly, Harrison is kind of on that bubble, more outside looking in, but some of the splash on his resume when you have, one of the greatest, interception returns for a touchdown and one of the greatest plays in Super Bowl history, that name's going to be remembered when it comes to the voters, which is what ultimately all that matters. It's people voting. It's not numbers voting. It's not an algorithm that votes these guys in, and that play is going to be pretty striking.
There you go. All right. Real quick, everybody, and it's still, I like to think of week kind of 6 and on as a good time to start really closely tracking the adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat. I don't, there's so much noise and not enough volume in 3 weeks of play here, but I will throw this out here for you. None of these numbers I think will surprise you, Alex, but through 3 games, Mitch Trubisky has posted an adjusted net yards per passing attempt number of 5.0. The Steelers defense has posted a adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat of 4.9. Now 4.9 is good enough to win with. But once again, you're only talking about a 3-game, snapshot here overall. The 5.0 on the offensive side of football is just nowhere close enough, though.
And talk to me about that 4.9 after you play the Bills and the Dolphins and the Eagles, and we'll see where it looks. I'm guessing it'll be a little bit higher than 4.9. But yeah, to your point, I mean, currently the defense is doing enough. They're good, not great, and certainly still missing TJ Watt, but they've kept these scores down and made them winnable and competitive, and the offense just is doing nothing, especially in the second half of games. I mean, how many points in the second half do the Steelers have this year? It's not many.
Right. Well, look, I mean, they can't even score in the first quarter alone. And you have to go back to the game against the Detroit Lions last season. What was that, week 10? For the last time the Steelers have scored a first quarter touchdown. I believe that was also within that. The last time it was the first offensive possession touchdown. And throughout Matt Canada's, time right now, which I guess is 20 games in total, this team has 4 first quarter touchdowns, offensive touchdowns overall. And what was the stat that we were entertained with just on Sunday there? The Buffalo Bills have 8 consecutive games of opening drive touchdowns. That seems just
it's a Greek miss. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't seem possible. And even the one I think yesterday against the Dolphins, they went for on 4th down and got it. That's how confident they are on the offensive side of football there. So this team just can't put opening drives, opening scripts, whatever together on top of it all.
The stat that I pulled this week, and I'll have to tweet out at some point, over the Steelers' last 27 regular season games, they've only scored more than 30 points once. And that was in, I believe, the failed comeback attempt against the Chargers, I want to say. So that was a lot of catch-up football there. So once over the last, in this golden era of offensive scoring more than ever, Pittsburgh has put up a 30-burger one time. And yeah, that was last year, week 11 against the Chargers, 37 points.
And look, once again, you can win, to a point with some of this small ball, if you will, or, low numbers like adjusted net yards per passing attempt. But occasionally, if you're going to do that, you got to crack the run short, or the catch short, run longs, and obviously the Steelers aren't doing that. And on top of it, you better have a running game, which a consistent running game, which while this has looked okay at times, you compare it up to what we just saw that the Browns do, and it looks like, man, this is ugly compared to what the Browns did. And I mean, there's some huge, it really pops on the end zone view when you see what the Browns are able to do, against, even without TJ Watt, not a bad defensive front on paper for the Steelers.
Yeah, again, the Browns, they have talent, they have scheme, they have continuity. You combine all those, 3 things and other factors, they're as good as any unit in football in terms of running the ball and having that offensive identity, even when they're on their backup quarterback and had their issues there. Had issues along the offensive line with injuries. They're on their 3rd string center, essentially. They've had issues in terms of the right tackle play, but that run game's still chugging right along. And it's 20 points this year in the second half of games for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Just 20 points. One
other note about the adjusted, kind of the thing that's disappointing about inside Mitch Trubisky and his 5.0 adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat is, that obviously includes interceptions and sacks. And it's not like he's had a lot of those, right? So
yeah, good. It's just been bad offensive play.
Right. It's not like you can say, well, okay, but he has been sacked, 12 times in 3 games, or there was these 3 tipped 3 interceptions, and 2 of them were tipped balls at a receiver. You can't even back it out that way. It's just he's not completing balls down the field. End of story. That's what that stat really tells you. If you want to add context to that 5.0 number, which normally you don't, all you get is the number that doesn't come with context in that. So the fact, once again, the fact that number is 5.0, and bless his heart, he's not turning the football over, and he's look, even the sacks, most of them are on him anyway, within that, and that number is still 5.0. That really paints the picture that they're not completing passes down the field.
Where does that stack up league wide, that 5.0? Is there a number in terms of where that, and that's low, I know, but
yeah,
just to see where that ranks, I'm just curious.
I don't know if PFR has, let me see if they've updated from the games the other day there. Hold on just a minute. I'll let you know.
Yeah, not good, but I just want to know if is it truly 32nd? I'm guessing it's probably not, but I would say 27th, 28th.
Yeah, it's down there for sure. I'll tell you, just from a team standpoint, oh man, you want to see something ugly here. The Bears have played 3 games. They have an offensive adjusted net yards per passing attempt number of 1.7.
But they're 2-1, aren't they?
Are they?
The Bears, you said?
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they've had ugly win against the Texans yesterday, but yeah.
If it makes you feel any better, and it's probably because of the high number of sacks and obviously the turnovers against the Steelers, the Steelers' 5.0 number is, I guess, statistically tied with that of the Jets, Cardinals, Rams, and Steelers are all tied with 5.0 offensive, 5.0 adjusted net yards for passing attempts numbers. I would guess that if you run out the decimal points, that the Steelers are the worst of those 4 teams. And worse than the Steelers, a lower number, are the Bengals at 4.8, the Cowboys at 4.8, and the Cowboys have only played 2 games. The Colts at 4.3, and then the Bears at 1.7. So no, it's not the worst in the NFL, but it's right on down there.
That is the headline for Week 4: Battle of the 5.0s, the Jets and the Steelers.
Yeah, and the Rams even being on there. Kind of interesting when you have a guy like Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford and all like that. But once again, as I say, we spend a lot of time talking about that stat, but it really comes into full focus, I think, after you have about 6 games played. Sure. But from what the tape says,
it's not. His number's not lying.
And I don't think that we're going to see a huge man. If he could get this thing to 6, it'd be like, woohoo, going to the Super Bowl. It feel like, right. But yeah, I think 6 is kind of the ceiling if he can potentially, the Steelers offense, get to that number there on the offensive side of football. Now, look, if they don't keep their defensive number, 5.25 or less, none of it's going to matter, I don't think.
And again, that keeping that number below 5 is going to be more and more challenging when you're facing, if you're looking, I'm sure, some of the top offenses, you're going to see the Bills, the Dolphins, the Eagles. And so that's going to be a much tougher mission when you're not playing the Browns and the Patriots.
All
right, Dave, let's get to reader emails and close out today's show.
Okay. What about Rihanna doing the Super Bowl?
Is it just Rihanna, or are they going to have 30 other acts in there? I know they announced Rihanna, but yeah, I'm a fan of Rihanna, just as a casual listener.
All right. From Bryce here. In short, the offense as a whole is killing this team right now. The key Deontay drops, the low football IQ penalty by Chooks. What do you think is going to happen there? You think he's going to get a low IQ penalty on That's a close call. I guess he's talking about the ineligible man downfield penalty on Chooks there, right?
I assume so. I mean, I wouldn't call that a low IQ. It was pretty borderline to me. I mean, I guess you could call that letter to the law, but I wouldn't call that. I think maybe he thinks they called him on the falling on top of Walker, which wasn't a penalty and isn't a low IQ play. So,
yeah, I take issue with Bryce calling it a low football IQ penalty on Chooks there. He says even though the offensive line overall was pretty decent, he says Mitch missing reads. Canada's second half decision, all equal a Thursday night loss. He says, well, now on to the Jets. He says, I think Keller Witherspoon is a solid player, but I also don't think he's a very versatile player. Once again, I can't help but wonder if Tomlin and Austin are asking him to do things outside of his strengths. Tackling has been okay to me, but I've seen him playing too much off coverage, and it seems to me now that he is strictly an outside tight man coverage corner type of guy. You tell this is your guy. Get in his face and stay with him. He doesn't seem comfortable when you ask him to do some things, other things in zone. He wants to know thoughts on that. He says, who, in your opinion, right now is the best pass protector on this offensive line, and why? I mean, I just think overall they're not doing a bad job overall in pass protecting him, and that's why that one thing should probably be fairly thankful for. I think Chooks has really done a good job over on that side. So my inclination would be to go with Chooks.
Yeah, I would probably lean a core 4 as well, but I think every guy has held their own so far. In terms of Weatherspoon, I mean, he's always been an outside corner kind of guy. It's just being consistent above the neck, and as I mentioned, corners have had to play a bit more in the slot this year, dealing with empty sets and things like that. So that's maybe created some discomfort, which I'll definitely grant you there. But it just Witherspoon, the talent's there. Just can you be a consistent guy? And this is not new. As you mentioned, in San Francisco, it didn't work there because he was always so high and so low, and so it's just never been able to find that even steady play in his game.
Russian coverage. That's the way their secondary is kind of set up. And has been for years. The secondary will look better the better the rush is.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there.
What's going to happen? I think it's kind of obvious. But what if Ahkello Witherspoon cannot play against the Jets?
You're asking what about how they just line up?
Right.
It'll be Sutton staying outside, and then more Millette and maybe some Norwood in the slot on passing downs. But they played Millette, the Browns game because they're so run heavy. So you saw Millette play a lot in that one when Witherspoon went down. But it'll be a combination of Witherspoon Millette and or Norwood in the slot.
Brandon Robinson, he says it's evident that there's frustration from the players, especially from the wideouts. At what point does losing cause division in the locker room? Has it already begun to some extent? Look, I'm sure after every game, there's loss. There's some grumbling to some degree here. Some of these, you look at some of the body language so far. It's not what you want to see, right? I mean, you even have a rookie in Pickens looks to be kind of upset over there on the sideline over there. But then on the other side of things, Deontay needs to catch that ball down the field. The other drop he had too, I went back and watched all 22 on that screen pass. If he catches that, he's one-on-one with the corner. There is nobody within 20 yards of either of them. And if he can make that cornerback miss, that might be a touchdown. And so I think that drop was almost just as costly as the 3rd and 3 drop or tough play, whatever you want to call it. Was there a penalty on that play or no?
On the screen pass?
Well, right.
No, I don't believe so.
When there? Hold on a minute here. Let me look at the game.
I could be wrong, but I just remember watching that play on the all-22 going, wow, there's a lot of space. And that's why I think it was an RPO or something, and Trubisky just threw it hot because he loved the matchup, and that was the right decision easily because it's truly the safety's on the other hash, and he's pretty shallow, and that is a true one-on-one situation that Deontay wins a lot of the time.
That wasn't the too many men on the field penalty, was it?
That Cleveland got called for?
Right.
It might have been, but even if it was,
played stand, right?
Yeah, I mean, you catch that pass and go 50 yards, you decline the penalty, and
right.
and you're happy. So I don't remember for sure, but it was nothing on Pittsburgh that would have negated the play.
Okay, all right. Okay, I think we've handled that question there. Let's see here. Jim Bendis. I remembered a few years ago when Tom Brady was picking our zone schemes apart, everyone said we should play more man coverage, and we did, and thought we were good at one time. But now it seems like are back to playing zones a lot. Is this my imagination? Question: what are the plus and minuses of playing one over the other? What should we be playing now, or should we just mix it up?
That's a pretty big question
it's
overall.
A lot of different intricacies
Yeah.
within an answer of that for sure. And how much pass rush are you getting? Are you having to send numbers? What's the personnel on the other side? This team still plays a lot of man, though.
They came out in the year and played a lot of zone against the Bengals and the Patriots. They were more man against the Browns. It was more an even split when it was predominantly zone, I would say, against New England, and certainly versus the Bengals. A lot of too high, a lot of cover two. They've been leaning on this year. In terms of the upsides, when you're playing man coverage, obviously it's tighter window throws. If you have the talent, then hopefully you can just blanket guys and really have those kind of coverage sacks. In zone coverage, you're not necessarily relying on your top level talent to turn and run with guys. You get eyes on the football to deal with, breaking on the football and defending quarterback pocket movement and scrambles and things like that. So, as Dave said, there's a lot of variables in terms of which is better. I mean, most teams can need to play a mix because you don't want to become predictable and just play one coverage. Teams typically aren't so talented defensively in this offensive driven world to do just one thing and expect that that's going to carry them through. So you have to be able to mix things up. And so, you're generally going to see a mix based on the situation.
All right. We will end this one with Tobias getting after us. He says, I love your work. You're the best Steelers coverage out there. That said, I think you guys are very, very cautious in your form of criticism, and time like these need a little more power to some of the negative statements against the current coaching. Obvious example are Canada or Tomlin's now for many years of mediocre outcomes. It doesn't matter to us fans that these voiced opinions will not change a lick in the real world. We just need to hear it from you guys, even if you just must add that the change is unlikely. Isn't that what we've done, though? Is we've said, look, Canada's probably going to be out of here after this year, but to think that I guess people are wanting confirmation more.
Well, I would say that I don't hold back critique or criticism because it doesn't change anything, because nothing I say changes anything to that building, as it should be. So whether it's good or bad, they don't care what I have to say. So I'm not holding back something because it falls on deaf ears. I think maybe to the point the reader's saying there should be more criticism towards Tomlin. Is that a fair point? Should Tomlin get more heat than what he gets? I
suppose, but I think you need to go back to the whole building of the team on top of it too. What
do you mean by that?
I just think some of the decisions this team has made. Should Corliss Weightman be the Steelers? Okay, you want to play a game here? Should Corliss Weightman be the Steelers punter right now?
He looked good. I mean, that kicking in Denver probably helps a little bit the numbers. I mean, Harvin's improved, but I hear what you're saying. I mean, Weightman's been productive for Denver.
What the hell is Kendrick Green still doing on this roster at this point? And why was he even drafted in the third round overall? Why are you taking running backs? People don't like it when the criticism goes against the star that they own a jersey of. See, you take a shot at this team taking a first-round draft pick at the running back position, then it's instantly you hate Najee Harris, and then that kind of criticism is not allowed. Right?
Yeah, but I agree. I mean, I think people yearn for some of that stuff, and they bristle whenever there actually is, specific criticism at one particular player. But to Tomlin, just generally speaking, I mean, I've talked about it. It's been disappointing, this playoff drought, of which I've mentioned many, many times. And listen, I hate the never had a losing season stat that inevitably comes up every single year more than anybody else. I think it's a loser stat. The Steelers don't hang banners for going 8-8 or now 9-8 or whatever the case is. They hang, they put trophies in trophy cases. And if you're not doing that, there's going to be criticism. So I'm not going to call for firings if that's what people want. That's not going to happen, today. But I think we could be still measured in that critique of Tomlin because the overall success has been really disappointing, especially to end Ben's career over his last 5 years.
Look, and it starts with up above with ownership as well too. Kevin Colbert's run so scared for so long. I think with and I mean that in the sense of Art Rooney wants the run game addressed. All right, let's go out and get a running back. Whatever he wants at the top of the draft, go get it. Everything else be damned. And we joked for years there at some point, man. I mean, you got to admit, and I think everybody at this point, that it has really felt like this team's gone into drafts with 25 names on an index card for the most part. And the guys that they don't get on that index card, they somehow, at some point, a few of those guys circle back into, well, remember, they did have that guy in for a pre-draft visit, or they were at this pro day, the connecting the dots. I think they need to be a little bit more broader with what they're wanting, thinking about doing in drafts. I think they've been maybe too reactionary at times in tops of drafts.
When you say too reactionary, you mean that in the sense of what Rooney wants, or what do you mean by too reactionary?
Right. And circling in on one or two players,
Yeah.
And
because they've been so easy to predict. It's not been a secret who they like, what they're targeting. They're as easy to figure out. And a part of that's because they've had so much continuity. When you have the same people, they're easier to track. But still,
Right.
It's the first round. It's not terribly hard to know what direction they're going.
Right. I mean, there's criticism to be handed down. I mean, realistically, to be quite honest with you, Mike Solomon should probably be, would have a better shot because of his history as an offensive coordinator in the NFL than a guy like Matt Canada, right? If we're being honest here.
I mean, I don't know if he'll be better. I think he'll probably be better, but I mean, his track record with the Giants wasn't great. I mean, they're former OCs for a reason.
But he's done it before.
Yeah, but does that make it good? I mean,
no.
I don't know if he has arisen. I think he's a good quarterback mind. I think he's a good coach.
Right. But I mean, you're talking about a guy that never really. Canada did some interesting things at the college level, but was there any given point where, back Canada's one of those. Watch out for Matt Canada, rising offensive coordinator. This guy, give him his shot at the NFL level. Was that ever a thing? Maybe it was.
I don't think so. I think it's the question which I get asked occasionally is, what did this team see in Matt Canada? I don't really know. I don't have a good answer to that.
And do they need to get away from? Well, they have the mantra "next man up" on when it comes to players. Maybe they need to get away from next man up on the coaching staff.
Sure, there's been a lot of internal hires. They've had a lot of turnover in other, 3 offensive line coaches. They can't retain those guys. That's an issue as well. But again, just overall big picture, certainly it's been underwhelming with Tomlin. I do treat this year as kind of that transitional year, the way that when the Patriots had Cam Newton for their first year without Brady, that was kind of a down year. So, my expectations this year weren't terribly high. They're going to be higher hopefully next year. But yeah, I think Tomlin certainly deserves critique and criticism for just the overall lack of success this team has had for too long now.
Right. I mean, 2016 last playoff win, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's been the longest playoff win drought they've had since basically as Chuck Noll was getting there, which is depressing.
And I think the whole never losing record bumper sticker might that might be coming to an end here. This season.
Did that stat, quote unquote stat annoy you the way that it annoyed me? Because I loathe that stat.
It's just a way it's just a way to kind of paint the barn red, I think, if you will, because make people feel better. Look, I think Tomlin's a hell of a coach. I really do. But I within that though, I think he's at some point making chicken salad out of some chicken, is not enough. Now within that though, there have been some playoff games this team should have won. Plain and simple.
But even to the chicken salad, who's responsible for cooking the meal? I mean, it's Tomlin's responsibility for building this roster. So if the roster's not good enough, who does that fall on? It falls on him.
How you mean not from a draft standpoint, or yes, or
from just an overall roster construction standpoint? Right. I mean, it's not. I mean, he's in that room, it's the GM, it's ownership, but I mean, it's Tomlin's team too. I mean, he's as much involved in picking these players as anybody for a guy that's been doing this as long as he has in Pittsburgh.
The defense, if this defense was healthy and had TJ Watt right now, well, here's the thing. What have we said for years? I mean, it's great having TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith is coming along, but for the last couple of years, we've talked about, man, you got to have a better third option in there to get those, because it's unfair to ask TJ Watt to be out there for 97% of snaps,
Right.
And they're going to wear Cam Hayward down to a nub this year too. You got to have some depth in there. It's great to have the stars, and secondary guys are obviously expected to play 99% of the snaps throughout a season. That's okay. But up front, sooner or later, that stuff gets worn down, and they like it or not, Malik Reed to me is not that guy.
It's a great point about the edge guys. I had this thought as well, Dave, when I was watching the tape this weekend, saying I would draft even potentially a second or third round pick on an edge guy next year, because you have to have that number 3 to protect yourself, to rotate guys. You can't have this massive drop off the way this team has had when they cut Melvin Ingram last year, and they have, Tuska and Taco. And this year they trade for Malik Reed, but he's not been very good. You can't have that fall off whenever that is the engine of your team. And those are Tomlin's words. The engine of this team are the edge guys, and you got to have a good number 3 to rotate to protect yourself. I
mean, just think how much better TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith will be if they got 8 snaps off each a game.
Right. Or when somebody gets hurt, because, you never want to predict 6, torn pecs, but, a guy misses a week or two. These guys have not, Watts missed some time last year. Highsmith missed time last year. You just want to, it's just smart to not leverage yourself and say, hopefully these 2 guys who are great stay healthy. If we're not, we're screwed. That's not the approach to take. So, I would invest a pretty high draft pick in an edge guy next year to try to get that solid number 3.
All right. How about two interior offense linemen and 2 edge
and a partridge and a pear tree,
and maybe a blocking tight end somewhere in there. I'm not going to disagree with you. I really think and have thought this way for a while. The first 2 picks in 2023, regardless of position, is probably going to be an offensive lineman and an edge.
Yeah, and people could say go sign somebody, but to try to sign somebody that would come in to be a number 3 is going to be tough to do. And so you draft somebody and kind of make them be in that role, as opposed to willingly try to convince someone to sign.
Right, and do remember that what's going to happen with Highsmith. Obviously, great start to the season here, and you're going to probably have to make a decision going into next year of to pay him or let him play one more and see if he can earn the franchise tag.
True.
So.
What's his market? I know it's hard to tell middle of a season, but he's obviously adding to his value.
Oh yeah, so far, yeah, and he's obviously, we wanted him to hit that double-digit sack number this year, and he's well on his way to that. At this point,
does he still lead the league in sacks after week 3? As the bulk of it has concluded?
Yeah, but I think you got a key guy playing tonight in Parsons. Though Parsons is right up there.
Yeah, he does still lead 4.5. Parsons is at 4, so to be determined. But yeah, but are we talking Bud Dupree money for Highsmith?
If you want to lock this guy up, it's going to take, I don't know if it'd take 20 just yet, but it's going to take a good 16 or 17, I would think.
That's what Bud got, right? 17, I want to say. Yeah. Did Bud get 17? So that's probably just kind of guessing the number about that.
The way he's playing, he really has, man, he's made a nice ascension every year in his game right now.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, but I think getting depth behind, because Malik Reed's not getting it done. Shamir Jones, Delonte Scott, no thank you. And it's really, and again, anytime you go from Watt to anybody else, there's going to be a drop off. But even if Watt wasn't hurt, even whenever Watt comes back, you need to have a quality number 3. For the way this defense is built.
All right, let's see here. I think we've hit most of them here. If not, we kind of wanted to make this show a little bit shorter so we could get after some things and start preparing for the Jets and all like that. You and I will be back on Wednesday, and I think on either Wednesday or Friday we're going to try to have a Jets beat writer in. Tuesday, let's see, Wednesday is the first injury report of the week. Mike Tomlin talks on Tuesday this week, so we'll obviously recap that on the Wednesday show as well. I don't think there's much more to kind of hit in here. So within that, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com, upper right navigational bar. Here's a donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free, SteelersDepot.com, upper right navigational bar. So, until Wednesday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.